we usually start with some IP in the news. We've got two stories tonight that talk about. One is the discussion lately about COVID vaccine and patents, right? So should the companies, the pharmaceutical companies that that created the vaccine, should they be encouraged or forced to turn over their intellectual property to other countries so that other countries can make the vaccines and be put in a position where that perhaps more doses could be created more quickly. And I guess there's really two sides to this. The first side is the humanitarian side. And in fact, the US government does have the power under the Bayh-Dole Act to order companies to provide a compulsory license to intellectual property if it's deemed to be in the public interest and if the inventions were made with federal funds. So they certainly have the power to do that. And anybody who accepts federal funds for research may be required to do that. Also, there's the hope that maybe by spreading the knowledge a little bit, the virus will be better controlled, right? If the more people have access to the vaccines, then they'll be able to put the nip in the bud of this pandemic a little bit sooner. So that's one possibility. The other side of this is that really it's not so much the patents, but it's all of the know-how and all of the understanding on how to actually make and produce the vaccine that is really the most important part, and not so much the intellectual property. And as I understand it, making the vaccines is very complicated, and it takes a lot of know-how and manufacturing know-how, which really couldn't be transferred that quickly. So you have those two competing pieces. I'm just wondering, Kenya, do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like such a complicated conversation, right? Because then you have someone who has invented something and they're passionate about protecting it, and then you're almost being forced to share your knowledge and your intellectual property against your own will. So it's like, that's kind of good and it's kind of bad. I do believe in the whole humanitarian thing, though. Like if you have some sort of method or you have some sort of invention that's world changing and is going to help other people, like I think that's the right thing to do, to share it. But I guess my question to you is like, you know, if it's made with federal funds and they're kind of forced to do this, do they have to share the method of manufacturing outside of the actual formula itself?
Oh, that's a really great question. So they probably have patents on the methods of manufacturing since it is complex. So it's not just the formula that they would be asked to share. I think that the resistance to this, well, I think it's financial, obviously. It's the COVID vaccines are going to need to be made for a long time. Right now, the average cost of a COVID vaccine is $40 per vaccination. So it's not outrageously expensive like, you know, some drug treatments. And if you share the technology for making this one vaccine, you're not just sharing the technology for one vaccine, you're sharing a platform technology, which means this technology could be used to make a lot of different things. And so the companies have invested for a long time to develop these platforms, and sharing them, you know, if they just restricted the use to making COVID vaccines, maybe that would work, but they're reluctant to share this technology that could be used for other reasons. So,
and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like this is not really a case of one size fits all, because
right.
they all have their own different versions. So it's tricky to kind of know what's the right and the wrong way to go about this, you know.
Right.
But again, I think if it's going to help the greater good, you know, information is power, and you know, you have to kind of look at it that way too.
I agree. And I was listening to the CEO of an Indian, you know, India is having a lot of problems right now. And he admitted that they could, even if they had the technology, they wouldn't be in a position to actually manufacture the vaccine for anywhere from a year to 18 months anyway. And but what he said, which I thought was a good idea, would be some sort of partnership with the companies where they can kind of work out the details and protect everybody's interests. And so I think something like that sounds to me like a fair way to go about doing things. Getting the vaccines out there is the priority, but if you can also manage it in a way to kind of help everybody keep their investments strong, then I think that that makes a lot of sense. And so I thought that was a good suggestion coming from, somebody in India. So, and,
For sure.
so, and the next part, we have our wacky patent palooza. So today we're going to be talking about the famous banana case. It looks like a sausage and it splits down the middle, and you can put your banana in there when you're carrying it to lunch or to work. And this way you don't have to worry about having a smashed banana, because I always put mine in my backpack and sometimes it makes it in one piece and sometimes it doesn't. I think it's a great idea. My only question is, well, what if your banana is different size or different shape? Do you get a bunch of different banana cases? Does one size fit all bananas? I'm not really sure where that could go, but it seems like a creative idea. So
Creative. I mean, I love bananas, and it's funny because I'm like, I didn't know anything like that existed. You're right. And you travel around with it. It's not like something you can kind of stick anywhere, because if it gets smushed, it just makes everything gross and disgusting.
right.
But I'm sure they had to have like a variation in size, right? Like they are, it's not, it can't, I don't think it can be a one size fit all type of product. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I mean, the way the patent reads, they do say that you need different sizes. So, but they make Tupperware in different sizes, right? So
True.
why
This is
wouldn't
true.
why couldn't you have your own banana carrier collection, right? So
It's a great idea. I would actually buy that. It's a great solution to a smushy, gross banana.
have a banana on the go.
Right. That's so funny.
Yeah, and the other one, you could have an avocado case, because those get smushy too. And
That's a good
avocados are
idea as
supposed to
well.
be very healthy, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so now it's time for Richard's Roundtable. We'd like to hear from our guests about what they think about what they just heard. You can make a comment about anything that we just discussed. So let's start with Brian. Brian, welcome to the show.
Richard, great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I love the banana case. Solid idea. Where can I invest?
Well, you'd have to check with the owner and see if you could get a license to it, maybe go into business with them. That's always a possibility.
If we could just take it one step forward, the Uber for bananas, maybe if I could push a button and have it delivered to me, that would be even better.
I like that idea. Grubhub for bananas.
Yeah.
So, Jared, how about what do you think?
Well, once again, thanks again for having me, Richard. So I have to first start off and say, I think I might be a little younger than most on here. So I remember the days of going into elementary school and everyone had a banana in their backpack for lunch or for snacks. So I think it's an amazing idea.
Do you ever get into banana fights with anybody?
I don't recall, but I do recall a time in first grade. Maybe it happened. I'm gonna plead the fifth, but there might have been a food fight, and it might have been my fault.
Well, way to take responsibility for it. What can you say? So, Hope, what are you thinking?
Well, I think any good product or service, you find a need in the industry that you're in, and you create a product around it. And I think there's definitely a need for this. I'm thinking every truck stop and, every airport, because what do every airport, like little kiosks sell? Apples and bananas. And what happens when you shove your bag under the seat in the airport or in the airplane? Your banana gets smushed. So I'd be a buyer, and I think there are a lot of buyers out there. Although I think the patent, it should be like accordion. So it's like your banana's longer, your banana's smaller.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
I definitely think they're onto something. And I agree, the one size doesn't fit all when it comes to bananas. We don't want to discriminate against short or long or anything like that. So
In
bananas
this
are
case,
definitely,
size doesn't
this is a
really
win.
matter, right? So that's good. You know, you could like make a, you could sell bananas in these cases, right? You know, if you could make them, manufacturing, make them cheap enough, you could charge an extra dime for a banana. I think people would pay for that. So.
Sell to Dole and stick their label on it, and you got a gold mine.
There you go. John, what are you thinking?
Well, both your topics are really interesting, actually. With regard to the intellectual property on the COVID, I would add, you both covered the financial aspect, but the fact is that the companies that are making these vaccines are not just profiting from the money that was put in by government, but also by the fact that the FDA did a very unusual thing and given them emergency authority to distribute. Because there's 4 phases of clinical research, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3. That's why a vaccine takes 10 years. The FDA said, we give you emergency authority. You can put it out to the public, and basically your phase 4 trial is going now. So these companies wouldn't have made a thing, wouldn't have sold a single dose if the government hadn't supported them financially in some regard by distribution. And secondly, by giving emergency authority. That normally be 4 or 5 years away, but it was important for us as a society to get this vaccine out and get it going. So based on that, based on the fact of the money, the distribution, it's financially supported, and emergency authority, and we are a citizen of the world, I would like to see some sort of licensure. I would think that would be an option, is to some sort of licensure and start helping these folks, around the world. I'd say get it out there.
That's a great point. So.
And one thing on the banana, timing is everything. And I have somehow I got started late in life, and I have a 12 and 13-year-old, but I can tell you around most schools, they don't let them take anything to school anymore that can't be thrown away. So if you took your banana in a case right now, you couldn't do it, but I love the idea because I like the airline analogy myself. But
well, that's really great. So